Join us at Women of Courage and celebrate the achievements of women. In the upcoming months, I am going to change our format significantly. This year, we will exhaust three subjects: breast cancer in black women, voting, and the subjects for black men. Each of these ideas and subjects is essential for the black community. Our survival depends on the health of black women, our willingness to vote, no matter what, and the fortitude and determination of black males to develop. We might as well face it. The survival of any community depends on the mental and physical health of both the female and male. Children need both their father and mothers, and the community needs happy, substantial families to survive. No culture can survive without either. I want you to join me in our discussions. I want women to realize that the survival of their children is the only proof that they ever existed. Think about what I just said. Your children are the only proof that you ever existed on this earth. So when you are careless about your health and die before your time, the survival of your children is greatly reduced because they will be placed in foster care where they can be abused mentally and physically. I want men to join in learning about breast cancer and try to save the lives of their mothers, sisters, aunts, cousins, and grandmothers. I want men to begin to listen to subjects that can greatly improve their lives. I am going to play certain speeches regarding the need to vote. There will be speeches of Obama, Stacey Abrams, and others. I am also going to discuss Shirley Chisholm, Constance Baker Motley. She is the first African American woman to ever become a federal judge. All in all, I hope you will enjoy the new format and be greatly encouraged in your life. Also, thank you for listening and growing with us. Before we begin, we're going to take a few moments to collect ourselves and to relax before we engage into our discussion. What we need to do is to focus now on bringing positive energy into our lives and into the world. The energy that we project every day is the same energy that we get back. We have all seen those people that can walk into a room and they glow. People want to be around them. People feel better being in their presence. That's the energy that we need to create. And once we learn how to do this, our lives will be filled with greatness. We will attract that positive energy, and how we can do this is by changing our outlook, meeting every day with gratitude, thankfulness, optimism, and once you do this, you will see a change in yourself. I want you to take a moment and close your eyes. Think about everything positive in your life: family, friends, a career, your faith. All of this is how you start your day. Every morning when you wake up, I want you to think about what is positive in your life. I want you to list 10 reasons why your life is amazing. You will see the change. You will be changed. You will begin to attract life's blessings. Lead with gratitude. Be thankful and think positive.
Have power represented here today. And I come to ask you to go all out to get every Negro in this county registered to vote. each of you assembled here today decided that you were going to see that 10 other people are registered before the last day, which I think is next weekend, the 14th, I believe. Just see what a power you can be. And then after getting people registered, that is another and even greater responsibility. And that is to go out to vote in the primary. State of South Carolina, during the days of Reconstruction, sent many, many Negroes to the state legislature. The state of South Carolina not only sent them to the state of legislature, Negroes to the Congress of the United States. The last Negro to leave the Congress of the United States was from the state of South Carolina. And in his farewell address, the one thing that he said that even though this is a period that ends for us for a while, we will come again. Right here from this county and all over the state of South Carolina, once more we will be able to send to the State House. Once more we have the opportunity to send to the Congress of the United States competent, qualified, dedicated black men and women. Let us on that glad day in June march on ballot boxes. For this is the way we are going to straighten up the South and the nation. Let us march on ballot boxes until somehow we will be able to develop that day. And men will have food and material necessities for their bodies, freedom and dignity for their spirits, education and culture for their minds. Let us march on ballot boxes until men and women will no longer walk the streets in search for jobs that do not exist. Let us march on ballot boxes until the empty stomachs of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, Louisiana, and South Carolina to fill. Let us march on ballot boxes. Until the idle industries of Appalachia are revitalized, let us march on ballot boxes. Until brotherhood is more than a meaningless word at the end of a prayer, but the first order of business on every legislative agenda, let us march on ballot boxes. Let us march on ballot boxes until every valley shall be exalted, until every mountain and hill shall be made low, until the rough places are made plain and the crooked places straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Let us march on ballot boxes until we are able to send to the state houses of the South men who will do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with their God. Let us march on ballot boxes. One day, Mississippi, which has an affinity for the bottom, will be Mississippi, which has an affinity for the top. One day, Alabama, the heart of Dixie, will be Alabama, the heart of democracy. One day, South Carolina will be a better state. One day, Georgia will be a better state. And why is this true? Because mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Glory. And all over the South and the nation we can sing, glory, hallelujah, glory, hallelujah. Our God is marching on, and so I say, walk together, children. Don't you get weary. There's a great camp meeting in the promised land. also requested of the President that as soon as the bill is signed, that immediately federal examiners would be placed in certain key counties where we have faced a great deal of resistance, and we feel that within the next month we can double the number of Negro registered voters in at least 40 black belt counties if these registrars are immediately appointed. The President assured me that they would look into this and ask me to talk with the Attorney General about it before leaving Washington.
Dr. King, a number of people seem to feel that with the passage of the Voting Rights Bill coming after last year's rather sweeping Civil Rights Bill, that the time is right for an easing of demonstrations, perhaps a moratorium on racial strife. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think that in some areas there will be an easing of demonstrations where there is a real compliance with the 1964 bill and with the new voting bill. That is, if it is vigorously implemented, I think in those areas we may see a decrease in demonstrations. On the other hand, the problems of the North are growing every day, and I think in those communities there will be an increase of demonstrations in order to call attention to the problems in housing, jobs, and in the schools. Tell me when you're ready. Dr. Abernathy, Reverend Fontroy, and I have just had a very fruitful and meaningful hour with President Johnson to discuss some of the vital and important issues of our nation in the area of civil rights. I might say that in the very beginning I congratulated the President for the passage of the new voting bill, knowing that he had worked so passionately and unrelentingly for this bill, and made it very clear to him that this would be a great step forward in removing all of the remaining obstacles to the right to vote. President Johnson asked me to come in mainly to discuss the pending conference that will come up in the fall on civil rights. He is very concerned about making this an in-depth conference to grapple with the depths and dimensions of the problem of racial injustice in our country, and he wants us to emerge from this conference with concrete, positive recommendations so that in the future we will be able to grapple with this problem in a more profound way. He asked for my suggestions and my recommendations, and I said to him that as soon as possible I would be submitting these recommendations to him in the way that the Negro community and the allies in the white community will be able to bring these issues out in the open so that the communities involved will not be able to ignore the problem.
Dr. King, do you anticipate it'll take some urging to get some people to take advantage of the opportunity to register?
It will definitely take some urging. Naturally, when you have communities where people have been denied the right to vote for, well, now 80 years, where people have been denied the right even to go up and register because of fear of economic, social, and other reprisals, they have often lost motivation, and they have unconsciously become apathetic. And we are going to have to arouse the motivation and certainly lift the Negro from this apathetic slump in many communities, this understandable apathy. But we have, I think, the resources to do it, and we're just going to do it on the simple door-knocking, going into community campaign that will bring them out and take them down to register.
Dr. King, how long will it be before the number of Negro elected officials is proportionate to the number of Negroes in the electorate?
It's difficult to give the number of years. I think with the new voting bill, it will certainly speed up the time, and I think within the next 8 or 10 years we will see new and marvelous developments in this area, and I think we will see a great rise in the percentage of Negroes represented in government, both local and national.
Thank you, Dr. King.
On this Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a day of service and a call for voting rights, a crowd marched in Denver, Colorado today, one of the largest celebrations in the country. While in Washington, D.C., where the Senate is set to debate voting rights tomorrow, members of Dr. King's family took part in another march, his 13-year-old granddaughter calling out two Democratic senators by name. Here's ABC's congressional correspondent, Rachel Scott.
Just one day before a critical vote in the Senate, the family of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. marching in the nation's capital to demand action on voting rights.
Voting rights! When do we want it now?
But they know the odds are stacked against them. Senate Republicans are opposed, and two Democratic senators, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, refuse to change the Senate rules so Democrats can pass the legislation on their own. Dr. King's 13-year-old granddaughter calling them out by name.
Senator Sinema, Senator Manchin, our future hinges on your decision, and history will remember what choice you make.
Manchin released a statement celebrating Dr. King's legacy, but made no mention of voting rights. Martin Luther King III telling me that falls short.
It's kind of frustrating for people to be releasing statements and you really have not totally adhered to my father's ideals. So my hope and my message to him would be, Senator, you got to go further.
The Senate is expected to debate voting rights legislation for the first time this Congress tomorrow. But bottom line, Democrats do not have the votes they need to get it passed with.
Rachel Scott from the MLK Memorial for us tonight. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Renewed talks on voting rights are underway on Capitol Hill, where the Senate is plotting new paths toward a potential legislative victory. Democrats argue protections are needed after many GOP-led states passed some of the most restrictive and aggressive voter suppression laws this country has seen in decades. Protests and rallies are planned for later this month as political clashes erupt between Democrats and Republicans in states like Georgia and Texas, where access to the polls has been targeted. This all comes as the U.S. marks the 56th anniversary of the historic Voting Rights Act. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the bill into law on this day in 1965. The landmark legislation secured Black Americans' right to vote and banned discrimination at the polls. However, activists argue that those rights are being threatened. So for more on this, we want to bring in global human rights activist and chairman of the Drum Major Institute, Martin Luther King Jr. III. Thank you so much for joining us, Martin Luther King III. I really appreciate you joining us. You know, we had these two sort of ambitious landmark voting rights pieces of legislation that they've stalled, and it's kind of heartbreaking. What's your message to Congress and everyday Americans on this day after Senate Republicans blocked voting rights legislation in June, and as lawmakers really struggle to reach an agreement on this crucial issue?
Well, number one, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to share today. We have engaged with a number of organizations from March On to the National Action Network to SEIU and several others over 100 partners now to have demonstrations on August 28th in Washington and Atlanta and Phoenix and Miami and in Houston. And then there will be several sister city marches as well as over 30 activations, meaning in 30 places there will be some kind of demonstration saying that we want to expand the Voting Rights Act. We want to pass the John Lewis Voter Registration Restoration Act, which provides a pre-clearance provision so that states will not be able to just arbitrarily stop people from voting. And when I say stop, what I mean is putting restrictions in place to make it harder to vote. We should be expanding the right to vote, not retracting and reducing. And that is what we've seen in at least 18 states now with over 400 pieces of legislation being passed. So we're saying to our senators, really, because Congress really has done what it needs to do, except for the John Lewis bill now needs to be passed, which will happen. So we want our senators to pass this bill so that there's some federal oversight where states may tend to go too far sometimes to keep people from voting. In 2021, we had a great election last year in terms of there was no fraud. There was almost nothing. And yet we have a former president who continues to say there was, and that creates a lot of confusion because he's lying to people and people don't want to accept the truth. But the reality is we are better than this. We must expand, not restrict and reduce.
But Mr. King, so what's your message to local Republican lawmakers trying to enact these voting restrictions in states like Texas and Florida, who argue their intentions are meant to strengthen our elections, not to suppress or discriminate against voters? What do you say to them?
So I'm not sure that one of the things is proposed, I think, in the current legislation. It has not passed, of course, because the Texas legislature and legislators on the Democratic side left the state, so they cannot be a quorum at this particular point. But one of the things is Harris County, the largest county in Houston, where you have a large black and brown population. Hypothetically, if there were 100 boxes to drop ballots, now they're talking about one. That's a restriction. That's not an expansion. And so regardless of what they say, it's crystal clear as to what they're doing. And the only way you get, I think, action to change that is people must engage in a nonviolent way in the streets and say that this is unacceptable. This is not democracy. How do you talk about democracy all over the world, but yet you're trying to suppress democracy at home? And I don't think they'll say, what's the ID provision? People don't have a problem with ID, but when you have restrictive IDs and you are not able to get IDs to certain people, that becomes the problem. I mean, as I said, we're better than this. Why would we stop people from voting? Why would we not expand and make it so easy to vote that anyone can vote, not fraudulently, but easily? And we can do this because we did it last year.
Speaking of those Texas Democrats that fled the state, you joined them along with your wife and Reverend Al Sharpton, and you had meetings on Capitol Hill. You spoke to lawmakers about the urgency, the importance of these voting rights pieces of legislation. You didn't talk to everyone, didn't see eye to eye with you. What was the reaction? What was the response? Do you think you changed any minds?
I think I don't know that we changed any minds. We certainly met with Democrats and Republicans. We met with Senator Manchin first, and it was a very instructive meeting. He did say he supports the John Lewis Voter Registration Restoration Act. He thought he was going to be able to encourage at least 5 of his colleagues, he thought, on the other side to support it. He didn't know how much further it would go. We asked about a carve-out. I mean, we have a carve-out as it relates to as it relates to budget issues. We should have a similar carve-out as it relates to the most fundamental right that exists for us all, which is the right to vote. We felt he's not committed to that at this point. So I think we're going to have to wait and see. However, there were 8 members, including him, that afternoon who had met before we met with Senator Schumer, the majority leader. They had met, and I think they're working on something. And I think we're just going to have to wait and see. But I also think that we're continuing to do what we're doing. We're not going to give up and go away. Whether we are able to get this legislation at this point or not, I don't know. What I will say is in 1965, I can assure you that there was no certainty that the Voting Rights Act was going to pass, but it was what my father and others did in this country that made it imminent. And so I think we're in that same position today. I think the more people we get out in the streets, the more people we have calling our senators, the more people we have tweeting our senators, the better opportunity we'll have.
And what about the president, Mr. King, the president and Vice President Kamala Harris and the Biden administration? In your mind, are they doing enough to prioritize voting rights in this country? We all recall when President Biden delivered his victory speech, how he thanked African Americans across the country for delivering him that victory. What more would you like to see from them?
So I think the president came out and made a significant speech just a few days back around the issue of voting rights, instead where he is. In terms of whether he's doing enough, you never know all of the things that are going on behind the scenes. So I'm sure he's committed to it. He's committed to sign legislation if he can get legislation. The question is, how do you get more Republican colleagues who work with him? The irony is that there are several colleagues in the Senate who voted for the Voting Rights Act restoration in 2006. So why are those colleagues not doing that now? We talked to Lindsey Graham, and he said he might be interested in some things or be able to do something around police reform, which is very good, but that he could not vote for the Voting Rights Act, and which is hard to understand. What has changed in terms of those years that now you cannot support it? But I think that, again, people in South Carolina need to hear, Lindsey Graham needs to hear from his constituents. And this is part of what we're trying to do, in addition to registering over 2 million people between now and the midterm elections as it relates to these demonstrations. We're going to continue to have activism, engagement, and ultimately, I believe we can get a victory, ultimately.
You and other civil rights activists will be holding a march for voting rights in several cities, including Washington, later on this month on the 28th. What's your main goal?
The main goal is to dramatize and say to Congress, really specifically the Senate in this case, that we want to expand voting rights. We do not want, and we want federal government oversight, which is a pre-clearance provision that is in the John Lewis Voter Registration Restoration Act. And that particular bill, we want that bill passed. And we, as I said, we want to expand voting rights. States are choosing to restrict voting rights, and that is problematic. And that's why we are calling on our federal government to really make democracy real for all people and not exclude people from the process or minimize the opportunity for people to participate. That is a fundamental message. But as I said, we also have a goal of registering over 2 million people between now and the midterm elections. We also will have people calling senators. We're going to have people reaching out to senators in all the technology modalities. As I say, we have the potential, we believe, to see some kind of victory around the issue of expanding voting rights.
Martin Luther King III, thank you, sir, for spending some time with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
More than 6 decades after the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. marched for voting rights.
What do we want? Voting rights! When do we want it?
The battle for the ballot is once again front and center in the United States.
What is happening right now would not surprise him. It would disappoint him.
And the slain civil rights icon's daughter, Dr. Bernice King, told Reuters that the very thing her father fought and died for was once again under threat.
There are still, efforts and individuals, who would like to continue to manipulate voting districts and create a concentrated group of minority power in our nation that's not necessarily representative of the population of a city or a region or a state. And so, and other, challenges to the vote, the free exercise of the vote. And so as long as we have that possibility, voting rights is going to be essential.
Republican-led states have enacted a wave of new voting restrictions following the 2020 election, which civil rights groups say disproportionately impact poor and minority voters who lean Democratic.
Hear me plainly. The battle for the soul of America is not over.
In a fiery speech in Atlanta, MLK's birthplace, on Tuesday, President Joe Biden demanded the U.S. Senate enact a voting rights bill to ensure equal access to the ballot box.
For the right to vote and to have that vote counted is democracy's threshold liberty. Without it, nothing is possible. But with it, anything is possible.
Dr. Bernice King says she believes her father's vision will yet come true.
I remain hopeful, and because there is a young generation that I call the accountability generation that is keeping us honest. And so as long as all of those things are working together, and my faith in a God that is within this universe and moving in and through people, I know that ultimately we are going to see some change and transformation. It may not be everything at one time, but we will have victories along the way.
I'm talking about two Democratic senators, Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who say they support the bill, but refuse to eliminate the filibuster to pass it. They think the real problem isn't that our rights are being stolen. They think the real problem is a disease of division that can be cured with some optimism and conversation. Now, my father worked to bring people together in his time, but he was no Pollyanna. In his speech, The Other America, he talked about how some people were pushing back on civil rights because, like these two senators, they felt the problem couldn't be solved with legislation. They told him he had to change hearts first, and he worked hard at that. After all, he was a Baptist preacher. But he knew that when someone is denying you of your fundamental rights, conversation and optimism won't get you very far. He said, although it may be true that morality can't be legislated, behavior can be regulated. Even though it might be true, he said, that the law cannot change the heart, it can restrain the heartless. Even though it may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, it can restrain him from lynching me. So let me be clear. When states are engaging in lawless voter suppression, only the law can stop them.
I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors. And please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass. He said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Now for my break. Hello, this is Minister Gloria Lee from the Women of Courage Show. I want you to prepare to vote. That is correct. I want you to make up in your mind, come hell or high water, that you will vote in every election that is held in the state of Michigan, regardless of how long the voting lines are and regardless of the weather. Your vote is important. That is why you need to take some water with you and a small stool to sit on. Your vote will determine the property tax we pay, the car insurance that we pay, the housing that is available for seniors, the schools our children will attend. Your vote will determine the number of new job openings, the number of hospitals and hotels in our city. Your vote will determine the policies at our universities and the police force. Never assume that your vote does not count. Voting is the most essential activity that you will ever participate in your life. People have died so you can vote. Elections comes down to voter turnout, so stand in line and make your vote count. I would like for you now to listen to a short speech by John Lewis on voting. Listen to what he has to say and note the passion in his voice.
The Democratic National Convention has gavelled into session on this day 3, beginning about an hour ago. Let's go straight to the floor, where veteran Georgia Congressman and civil rights pioneer John Lewis is speaking.
Or do you want to keep America moving forward? My dear friends, your vote is precious, almost sacred. It is the most powerful non-violent tool we have to create a more perfect union. Not too long ago, people stood in unmovable lines. They had to pass a so-called literacy test, pay a poll tax, On one occasion, a man was asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. On another occasion, one was asked to count the jelly beans in a jar, all to keep them from casting their ballot. Today, it is unbelievable that there are Republican officials are trying to stop some people from voting. They're changing the rules, cutting polling hours and imposing a requirement intended to suppress the vote. The Republican leader in the Pennsylvania House even bragged that his state's new voter ID law is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state. That's not right, that's not fair, and that is not just. And similar efforts have been made in Texas, Ohio, Florida, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, and South Carolina. I've seen this before. I lived this before. Too many people struggled, suffered, and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote. Together to ever turn back. So Democrats, we must not be silent. We must stand up, and speak out. We must march to the polls like never, ever before. We must come together and exercise our sacred right. And together, on November 6th, we will re-elect the man who will lead America forward, President Barack Obama.
This is Minister Gloria Lee. Last month, I put an ad in this paper asking the readers to go to the websites https://nisv.info and website https://touchedbythelight.us and download the booklet, Black Women and Breast Cancer. Then send the PDF file to 5 other women, asking them to do the same. I got absolutely no replies to this request. So I'm submitting this short article to demonstrate the effect that death has on children, especially the death of their mother. Breast cancer must be fought all year long. For every woman murdered, there is probably a child left behind. That child will be raised by a relative or placed in foster care. If placed in foster care, the child languishes until adopted. Children who have lost their mothers due to murder do not always fare well, even if adopted. Parentless children suffer. How would you like to be told your mother was murdered because your father was angry and the court gave her custody of you? These children suffer from being left behind. It does not matter how many uncles, cousins, sisters, or brothers a child has. Nothing takes the place of a parent. The function of a parent is to give a child a feeling of security and placement. No individual can take the place of a parent. The parent is the rock for the attachment of a child. A parent is the child's strength. A child is able to say no when a parent is present. The child is able to make choices and negotiate when their parents are present. Their sovereignty is taken away from them when they are motherless. Parents are the resolution of life for children, and no child should be made to live without his or her mother. This nation apparently does not understand or does not want to understand the devastation visited upon society when the mother is missing from the home. Children need their mothers, and they should not have to suffer all their lives by having their mothers taken away from them. There has been enough posturing by politicians in this country for the past century. The problem of violence against women must be solved. Living without a mother is worse than living without food or water. Social scientists can design thousands of grieving programs for children who have lost their parents, but nothing will replace the pain and void a child feels in not being able to see his or her mother again. There was a man sitting in a bar during a fundraising event. When he learned money was being collected for a little girl because her mother was recently murdered, he openly wept in that bar. He said the child's life would never be the same. He knows because he had to live without his mother. Do you realize how powerful the pain was inside this man for him to weep openly in a bar? He was not only crying for that child, he was crying for himself. It will only take 5 minutes of your time to download the PDF file Black Women and Breast Cancer and send it to 5 friends. You could help save a life. Early detection of cancer is important. There are 2 major killers of Black women, murder and breast cancer. Women can be instrumental in saving women in both of these situations. Sticking your head in the sand and ignoring this problem is no solution. Standing up and facing the monsters confronting us is one solution. And for your information, sticking children in foster care leads to prostitution and prison. Our radio show deals with social issues. It will not hurt you to listen. Why? Because some of this information discussed may help save your life and the lives of your children or family members. There are monsters walking our streets, ladies, and we need to stand up and fight them.
Hi, I decided that at the end of every show for the next year, I would share excerpts from a book that I believe would enhance your life and make you a stronger thinker and problem solver. All characteristics that will help you win at life and raise stronger and healthy children. Many of you turn your nose up at reading, or you snub the advice that you must read in life to succeed, or you compare the cost of a book to getting a new pair of shoes or getting your hair done or your nails done. The reason why you make these cost comparisons is because you do not truly value a book. A book is a magnificent instrument that can change the course of your life and the lives of your children. In later shows, I plan to discuss with you how a book changed the lives of certain people. I understand that you do not earn a lot of money, and this money is valuable to you because of all the things you see advertised that you desire, and you do not want to spend a lot of money on a book. A new pair of shoes is more valuable to you than a book. If you truly cannot afford a book, then you need to go to the library and take your children with you for a day of reading. You must gird your loins and proceed at educating yourself. Some of you seem to think that having a conversation with your stupid girlfriend or your stupid boyfriend will help you more than reading a book, when actually having a conversation with your loudmouth girlfriend or loudmouth boyfriend is merely a cathartic, allowing you to blow off steam.
A discussion of the book, You Are the Prophet of Your Life. This is an amazing book beyond the typical minded expectation. The book is about to make everyone well know with the discussions of various phases of life, which everyone needs to know at higher priority. This book is hope for everyone in this turmoil life with the discussions of God's will. This book will make your life easy and smooth, that you can open your mind to any difficulty or problem. After reading this book, you will understand that everything in the whole universe will adjust itself to accommodate your words, because your spirit has so much power. It will move everything in this universe, and everything will come in line with that. So you are the one supposed to speak in the middle of your house. Speak prosperity, speak help, speak peace, and speak reconciliation. Victory, the middle of your business. You are the one to speak success. You ought to speak it. You don't need anybody to speak it. God is expecting you to speak. It doesn't have to ask God to speak it. God is not going to come down to say a word. as he says you are the king and you speak it. I've given it to you and made you just like me in my image and likeness, so that you can be like me and operate like me. You speak it. There are many other benefits to reading this book. Positive changes in life. The readers of this book may experience the positive change in life because this book is based on the solutions that no one can tell you, or neither have you wanted to discuss with anyone. Thinking of more and more problems will make you harvest the negativity of life, and this book will allow you to take control of negative thoughts and provide positivity that makes your life better. Faith and belief. Doubts and unbelief make you disheartened and extra conscious even in little matters. Reading this book will make you believe in faith and belief, which reduces stress and increases empathy. Religious belief. Religion is something that makes hope in people. Everyone dies, but there is after death. Life is coming for final results. What you do in your life. This book will make you capable to see the difference between wrong and right. Build self-confidence. This is very important for you to believe, trust in yourself. This book will provide the best way that readers can build self-confidence for the betterment of life. Positive decision-making power. Decision-making is one of the major things of your life. Your one wrong decision will lead you towards jail or hell. This book will provide you the best positive decision-making power, which is necessary for everyone to stay away from the wrong decisions. Reasons to read. You are the prophet of your life. 1. This book is not just for Christians. This book is good for people of all religions or even lacking religion. As said on the About page of the book, you don't have to believe in God to read scriptures. Reading the scriptures can help liberate you from negative thinking. In this book, we see how this is true and can learn to fight against this negative thinking ourselves. 2. This book is a great book for feminists. This book talks about the struggles of women put in hard situations. Although it is not recommended for survivors of violence, it is a great reminder of how the world can be to those of us who have been more privileged and lucky. This book shows us the lives of fellow women who've had it tough. It reminds us to be grateful for our fortune and reminds us how this world needs to change. Once we have that in our heads, all of us women can stand together and make the changes needed to better the lives of all women, hopefully forever. 3. This book helps us break away from negative thinking. Negative thinking is what keeps us away from our true potential. If we don't think we can do something, often we won't. The author of this book herself mentioned in her introduction that she almost didn't go through with writing the book because 3 men told her that no one would read it. If we instead believe in ourselves, we can reach our full potential. We can write that book or start that hobby. 4. This book reminds us to stick to our morals. No matter what you believe in something. Something or someone is right and the other is wrong. There are nuances, but you have created those nuances with your beliefs too. The author of this book is clear and strong beliefs and feelings when it comes to what one should and should not do. Even if we as readers do not agree with this, we can be inspired by her intensity. We can learn how to be as strong in our beliefs as well and stand up for the changes we want to happen. 5. This book helps us question the society we are a part of. This book points a critical finger and magnifying glass at our society. It shows us how men and women each fail in our lives and our society. We can see how the author is skeptical of our society, and we can become skeptical ourselves. This is not a bad thing. This keeps us from blindly following something that may or may not match our values and morals. 6. This book helps us take a deeper look into our emotions. You are the prophet of your life shows us how our emotions affect our actions. and how these emotions can get in the way. If we are too loose with how we feel, we can make decisions we will later regret. However, if we are too strong, we can't let in love of anyone, including God. This book helps us check on our emotions by hearing the stories of others. 7. Reading itself is great. Reading is fun. It can also help us better our lives and increase our knowledge of many topics. 8. This book reminds us that we are to be judged by our actions and words. We are what we do and say. We are to be judged on that and not anything else. Just because we describe ourselves as a specific type of person like Christian or atheist, that doesn't make anyone better or worse than the other. The superiority comes from what you do with the life, time, and opportunities we are provided. 9. This book makes you feel. This book uses the second-person point of view of you. This keeps us in the headspace of those to who the author is writing. It makes you feel like the author is talking directly to you, reaching into your soul and letting you know right and wrong. 10. The book provides actual biblical quotes. Actual biblical quotes show you the more direct words of God, which can help religious individuals in their worship and personal relationship with God. It can also help us understand the reasoning behind the author's beliefs and gives her some more authority on each topic. As well, even if you are not religious, you can recognize the historical significance of the text and understand that they are coming from a place of hoping for a more moral world. You should visit touchedbythelight.us and
Congressman John Lewis is a living legend and an icon of the civil rights movement. A central focus of Lewis's activism has been the fight for the right to vote, a right that until 1965, generations of African Americans had been denied.
When John Lewis was a teenager, he read in a comic book about what Dr. King had been doing in Montgomery. And he went to his parents and he says, I want to be part of this.
By 1963, John Lewis had helped organize demonstrations and sit-ins across the South. When he was elected chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that same year, he became one of the Big Six leaders of the civil rights movement and helped plan the March on Washington. At age 23, Lewis was the youngest person to speak at the event. But his most defining moment came 2 years later, when he turned his attention to voting rights and helped lead a dangerous civil rights march from Selma to Montgomery.
John Lewis was on the front lines of the 50-mile march, starting in Selma to Montgomery, demonstrating the murder of Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young African American who was killed by a state trooper, but also the denial of African Americans' right to vote across the South. If they could get the nation to zero in on Selma, Alabama, a place that had a large black population and very few African Americans who were registered to vote, then perhaps there could be some action.
As activists marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, state troopers tear-gassed and beat them on what came to be known as Bloody Sunday. Lewis himself was severely beaten, suffering a fractured skull. 8 days after Bloody Sunday, President Lyndon Baines Johnson introduced the Voting Rights Act in Congress, and he would sign it into law in August 1965.
Today, we strike away the last major shackle of those fierce and ancient bonds.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was written on the road from Selma to Montgomery. The government responded and reacted to the power of the people.
John Lewis has helped secure the right to vote for millions of Americans. He's been on the front lines of the fight for civil rights for over 50 years. And the last time I checked, he was still fighting.
Too many people struggled suffered and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote. And we have come too far together to ever turn back. We must stand up, and speak out.
One moment in time can change everything in your life. When you agreed to purchase the books The Prayer Jar and The Woman I Want to Be to help save someone's life, you are actually helping yourself. No one knows when they will be diagnosed with breast cancer. So help yourself and others by purchasing a book at the WHPR Studios at 160 Victor Street in Highland Park, Michigan. We thank you for your support. The proceeds will help us in our year-long campaign. Are you a woman seeking solace? Or are you a woman in need of the comfort of prayers? Or are you one distressed and disturbed? It doesn't matter your niche. The Prayer Jar is a book just for you. It deserves your study table. The author, a fellow woman, writes this book inspirationally to address your prayer needs in every situation. The book does not only bring you closer to God, but it also leads you to a mature, prayerful life. The printing is in black and white. Don't wait. Go to https://touchedbythelight.us/regular-publications to get your copy instantly for $14.95 only. The Prayer Jar, a Christian book for your prayer life.
Thank you for listening to Women of Courage, and have a great day.